Okay, let's jump into it. What are we at? 10:27. So there's that nice little lull just before we get too much of the sort of Asia volume sort of coming in. Actually going to start on copper today, just because normally I'll sort of cover the copper a little bit later in these little daily takes, but this has just been such an awesome trade. I mean, really, as I've been sort of calling from these lower levels down here, it's really just been powering on. We had this little sort of one little sort of fake out of a move, which is you can see just the size of the sort of engulfing pretty much candle afterwards, and it's just fired up. But the big main part that I've sort of loved about this is this big falling resistance that we've seen. We got the breakout, we got the back test, and then this is what I was saying. This candle, if we zoom in here, it gives a better picture of it all. Oops. This is your breakout, and then puts in that top candle here. And this is how I was saying, like sort of with those breakouts. You put in this top candle, you get your retest. This becomes a very crucial point for confirmation of this move. And you can see as it came up, it drifted up and it's just exploded once it's gone past there. So to me, this is right up into a little bit of a resistance zone, particularly if you flip it onto the weekly. We can see that obviously we've had a fair few bits of wicks and that around here. The next level of sort of candle bodies up around the zone here. I don't really sort of count this. I've kind of disregarded this sort of what was the bottom end of that triangle, because realistically, what should have happened if this was to sort of be the case would have been this. It's broken the candle, broken the triangle, back tested, and it melted down and came right down here. Obviously, we didn't see this. It's just come in this nice little swing level down here. And you can almost sort of like, as I said, look, I'm going to get rid of this because it's not relevant anymore. And we're seeing more of a triangle, a descending triangle sort of playing out. And with this, typically you sort of think with a descending triangle, you look at the direction that it's sort of come into it. Now you could say, yes, it's sort of coming from these sort of highs. This is on the weekly, so it's quite a big thing. From the start of the year coming down here, but actually coming into this, it's a bit more of a, as it entered into this actual specific triangle area, this was in more of an uptrend. And it's just a consolidation, consolidation, consolidation. And we're seeing that break out now. So I think we've sort of definitely sort of got a little bit of work to do. Up around this area, I think is going to be a little bit of a pause up into this sort of, to get above 4,000. I think that's going to be the big one because this is a bit of a grind here, but this big thick bit here, this is pretty much what we'd be calling the swing high. And of course, when you're looking for these breakouts, that's what you want to break. You want to break the swing high. But certainly at the moment, RSI is looking very healthy for a little bit more of a continuation, a bit more upside. We've got the break, we've got the back test on the sort of the daily sort of time frames. It is hitting top side of what would have been a little bit of this channel. But of course, sort of like we did have a little bit of a fake out here, so an overswing. For what I tend to find with channels, and it works very much with sort of ranges, and also a little bit sort of with channels, but typically more with the ranges. When you have a bit of an overswing of them, you can have a little bit of a counter overswing the other side equally as much. So, you know what I mean? Even if we sort of pop out to the top side here, which would then sort of line up with these sort of previous highs, I'd imagine then we'd sort of definitely have a little bit of cooling off and we could sort of look to have, it's doubled up here. Excuse me. I'm going to look to have this sort of pushed up a little bit higher and sort of give us an idea of where we might sort of be looking for a bit of a pullback and a little push back further up. I mean, this could just kind of keep sort of hammering through because obviously this is a very strong breakout here. And this is what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, that sort of like, above here with the breakouts here, the market's going to start to take notice of this because copper has been realistically spent a lot of time just sort of drifting along, and a lot of people have been calling it very sick. And it has been, because obviously you're putting in these significant lower highs each time. But now it's really sort of starting to fire up, and I think it's going to come across a lot of people's radars. This in turn is going to help Aussie. So we'll flip across to Aussie, have a look at that next, and we're seeing the same thing here with Aussie. Aussie's very much sort of had this triangle, and it's broken out, back tested, came up here. This is the breakout candle. So if you think about exactly the same as with the copper, we had that breakout candle. This becomes a very significant point. This is already a significant point because we look back at how many times it has rejected from these levels. last night's video, obviously, I sort of showed how strong these rejections have been from this zone. And this is the thing that sort of like so much of the market go, well, you know what? I've sold it down here. Well, obviously they sold it down here. I sold down here, sold down here, sold down here. You've got a pretty high chance of this same pattern repeating. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it worked very well for anybody that was short. But, you know, you can't keep poking the bear instead of going, oh, you know, just because it's happened previously, it's going to happen forever. It needed to break and melt down below 62 to sort of like really sort of qualify this whole area as just a pause before another leg down. It's not. It's bucking that trend, and anybody that's short, they'd be sweating if they're not already. So I think certainly we've got a little bit more upside sort of to come with the Aussie sort of moving forward. We've seen this sort of like the RSI really. I mean, we had a little bit of a dip down as we sort of came back to start of last week. But realistically, you can see here the selling pressure. It's not coming down to these oversold areas. They're sort of taking it up every time. So if we get down onto the lower time frames here, I was looking for, as you can see, the sort of little pullback. We did get a pullback, but not quite as deep as I would have liked. I had some orders sitting at 28, 65.28, where we get 65.34, which isn't too bad because I mean it's a 65.62 high. So you know 30 was that 28 point drop down. I looked for a little. I was just a little bit more cautious because obviously I was asleep. I didn't want to be sort of like putting too much on the line and not being able to sort of manage the trade too well. So that's fine. That's the name of the game. You miss some of these ones, but ultimately it's holding up very well. We had this sort of smaller flag breakout, and it's just hit that price target, and it's just consolidated. I mean, obviously it had that little drip down here, but it shot straight back up. Like this to me is saying that the market's happy to take it higher because you know the buyers are moving up, moving up, moving up. Put it down here. This is on a 4-hour candle, so well, if we put it onto a 1 hour, you can see a better range here. As it sort of dropped down, they snapped it straight back up and unable to close it outside this range. We're testing the top side of this now. We've got Bullock talking at the moment, but hasn't seemed to be too many comments coming through. It's funny. It's sort of like, you know, you hear sort of like when these Fed talkers are speaking, not even Powell, like just any of the Fed talkers are talking, and like just, you know, Twitter feed is just like they said this, they said this, they said this. I mean, all I've seen come through now is that Bullock is optimistic about the labour market. Okay, that's great. Cool. Anyway, we've got RBA minutes coming out in just under an hour now. So more recently, this has been fairly negative for Aussie. I mean, as everything has been pretty much negative for Aussie, we've seen. But generally, the talk seems to be, oh, it was a close call, but you know, at the last second, we decided to whatever, raise, pause, these kind of things. These kind of ideas of uncertainty very much lead people into sort of going, oh, well, maybe they are done. And if they're done, bang, let's sell the Aussie and move it down. So that is something to be aware of that we've got sort of coming up in the next hour, because obviously this can have a little bit of a sort of impact. But again, sort of our news is all very well and good, but really it's all determined on what they're doing with US dollar. And this can work well for an Aussie bull case because even with bad, well, seemingly bad, like sort of news talk of this, sort of like, oh, we're not sure what we want to do, we might be at the end, this kind of talk. If they're still selling the US dollar, that move down will be short-lived and it'll be bought up. You can see here, and this is sort of, if I flip onto the other chart, this is the one that I was sort of basically following over the weekend. Following over the weekend, I was sort of like detailing to the end of last week, and we had here buys, 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 and we said, look, you know, how's it going to move up? It's going to move up when nobody wants to sell here. What's going to happen? The buyers overcame it. Buyers moved from here up to here. Anything thrown down here. This is what consolidation is. You throw it down, they buy it. You throw it down, they buy it. You throw it down, they buy it. All of a sudden, they've got nothing left. They go up, boom, and you get your breakout. And basically, we're just seeing the buyers move up every time. So they were here, they moved up to here, they moved up to here. And this is what we want to see. We want to see a continuation of these buyers moving up, exhausting the levels of sellers. I mean, we're right on price target. I mean, we're sort of like, you know, what have we got? Sort of 65. you know, depending where you're calling this price target. I mean, this whole zone here, we're within 10 points of price target, well, first price target. So certainly, if the talk is more hawkish, if there is sort of more wording along the lines of we really sort of pushed it and we sort of we don't think it's done yet, and it was a unanimous decision that we needed to raise, which you would think maybe it was because everybody sort of telegraphed that rate rise. There wasn't any question. The inflation is going up. Like, I know the inflation isn't the only factor, but it is the number one sort of thing that people are talking about in regards to this stuff. There's the other sort of lower, second and third tier news, or yeah, third tier data in that. But yeah, certainly the fact that inflation's going up, housing market, even though the RBA say they have nothing to do with the housing market, it's got to weigh into it realistically. It's just going insane. Nobody cares. Like, that's the thing. If you're buying a sort of $5 coffee and then it goes to 5.50, well, it's up sort of 10%, and that's a big jump and all this kind of thing. But then if somebody buys a house and it goes, 3 or 4 or 500,000 above the asking price, and then the house down the street does the same, who cares about your $5 coffee? That's where the real inflation is. Like, these big swabs of money. And the thing is, not everybody's on a home loan. You've got people that are sort of own multiple houses. They're capitalizing on this growth because, they're not sort of going, okay, well, I've sold this, and then they just need to put it into another house. So it doesn't really add more money. It just sort of transfers it. But, if you've already paid off your mortgage, you've got multiple houses, your house has gone up 20, 30%. Well, you sell it off, bang, there's a fat whack of cash plus the 30% of the increase that you've got to spend in the economy. And that's what's really going to sort of drive the inflation further than your $5.50 coffee. Nobody cares about that. Well, obviously people do, but that it really gets dwarfed when you get these large increment sort of gains. So large, yeah, sort of gains basically. So anyway, back to the chart. Got this nice little range sort of building up here. If we do get a break here, again, we can almost sort of put another price tag on it because this is sort of lined up for itself to be a nice little flag area as well. And if we say, okay, we're going to get a break of this zone, we can look for that next move up. What we want to keep doing is finding that the buyers are moving up, buyers are moving up, buyers are moving up. Alternatively, when we see that sort of it comes into a nice little range like this, and we start to see candles close to the downside, well, we know that the buyers aren't continually moving up. And maybe the buyers go, okay, you know what? I've bought down here, I've bought down here, bought down here. I'm going to take a little profit. I'm going to come down, come down, come down, come down. And, we're going to see that slight little sort of short-term range reversal. So that's fine. But for the time being, the fact that it just did not give up any of these sort of gains overnight leads me to think that we potentially do have another leg coming in Aussie here. 66, as I've said a couple of times, is going to be the tough nut to crack. We're only 40 points off this, which is amazing because realistically, where was it? It was only 2 months ago. 2 months ago. It was last month, started this month or so. I know, oh mate, that was 65 down here. Yeah, so yeah, October. So yeah, a month ago. Not even a month ago. We were down at 62.72. I mean, if just for the fun of it, we'll put it on a 1 month candle. We can take, let's just sort of have a look at it. Like, that's a big push off the lows and a rejection here, and the month isn't done. I mean, realistically, on a monthly basis, 67 would be a potential next stop zone down here. I'll just mark it out anyway while we're doing it. It's a monthly body fill. I mean, the RSI is just sitting in the middle here, so it can certainly go either way with it all. But this is a nice big fat rejection. And if you look at the previous times that we've had these big rejections, a bit of stuffing around, but there've been long continuous gains on them. Like, as I've said this a number of times, and you've seen here how I've marked it out. If we put it on the weekly, it shows it. This is what I called as it was happening, that this looked very trappy. that we were coming down, drop down here, similar to this move that we had back here, where we had support, came down here. Look at this rejection here, and this is on a weekly, but the same price action still applies. The rejection there, and bang, push to the top side. Ultimately, yes, we are still in a downtrend kind of channel if you drag it back far enough. But this sort of certainly, this push from here, from 65 back up to 69, people that were short down here, if you can withstand a 5.6% plus, call it 6% push up to the top side, that would have squeezed out a lot of people. Anybody that was short from down here, they would have been putting their stops around here. Well, they all got stopped out. Similar thing here. We're pushing down. People put their stops around here. Now they're getting squeezed out. So I think this will be the big, we can see that how crucial this sort of 66 area was. This area where we stopped previously, these wick highs. This is the trap lows, if you want to sort of call it that. But really the support was at 66 area, which is what we're coming into now. So I think this is going to be very tough, but it's going to be very significant if it does break. You then sort of push up to the top side, and this is the thing. If we can get above these levels here, you got the two targets that we're looking at, which is a little bit of a sort of convenient crossover here. This is the body fill line that we just put, monthly body fill line that we just sort of put in. And also you've got this big falling resistance here. Now this one, if you really drag this out, again, this is on the weekly, and higher the time frame, stronger the sort of, more meaningful the levels are. You can see how many times price is rejected from these things. Similar to how we were looking under lower time frames, and every time it had hit 65, it had dropped down 3%, 4%, 5%. Look at these sort of things. I mean, again, this is a weekly time frame, but if you sort of say, okay, look, this dropped here, down to this point here, well, that dropped 17% when it hit this line. This one dropped 8%. Yeah, dropped 8%. This is very significant each time that it's hit this line. So again, these things, it's not going to happen forever. 10% drop off from this line here. Every time it's come in contact with this falling resistance, it has been quite a significant knockback. So it means two things. One, when we hit it, it's going to be very tough and you'd expect some pushback. But the flip side of that is if you do break it, like we saw, if I go back to copper for 1 second, this is copper. See the similarities? Every time it hit this, it's dropped 11%. Drop this one, it's dropped 14%. This one, dropped 11%, or 10.6, whatever. This is your falling resistance. This is on the weekly time frame. If we go back to Aussie, which is this one here, we can see the similar thing. And this shows the significance of a break of this line. Plus, we can get that body fill. The body fill's not as significant. Of course, these sort of wick highs over here, 69, that's going to be the big one in terms of horizontals. But there's big falling resistance here. If we can sort of get above that, that's going to be very significant. And that's going to be the time that we say, okay, look, you're really starting to see a change in trend. What I ultimately sort of think could be potentially happening, like we've seen on the others, is this triangle. So we could realistically hit this and we could still be coming back down further, depending on what happens with the US dollar. Again, sort of our data's great and all, but it doesn't really matter if the US is still, if they decide to run it up again. I actually ultimately think that the US dollar is going to continue to sell down. I think it's going to go to sub 100, which is going to sort of fuel Aussie, which is sort of going to be pushing up because it's an overall push. This is a very sort of what I called pie in the sky price target from 63. But, this is the same length of the wedge that we had, and price target gives us back up at that 69. And again, that if we do get this, that call was from 63, was obviously marked. That's a 9% move on the Aussie if we do get this continuation, which if you look at this just on a chart basis at the moment, this is certainly doable. We've got some heavy areas that we've got to break through, yes, and it may not, well, may not, it's not just going to go up straight like this. But there's no reason that we can't get a bit of a grind into the end of the year. And as I say, time and time again, these aren't these aren't time targets. These are price level targets. So this could be anywhere along here kind of thing. More likely probably over here. sort of towards the end of the year, sort of early January or so, if we do get there. But certainly, if we can get back up into this, this was a nice little range that we sort of played through for a couple of weeks. We've been right down underneath it for a while, and now we're sort of trying to sort of justify sort of breaking back up into the top side of it. That's the bigger picture of it all. Again, back to the here and now. We are sort of seeing this little range testing the top side till you get a break and a close outside the top side here. It's at the risk of sort of really just bouncing back and forth. And I think mainly the thing with this is that obviously DXY and US dollar and all that kind of stuff, the Tokyo volume hasn't really sort of come online for the session yet. And also you've got the RBA minutes coming up soon where, as I said previously, they've been quite sort of like pandering to all these sort of people. Oh, yeah, no, don't worry, we're still your friends, but, we may need to raise rates, but, we're not going to do it quite yet. Whatever. Do what needs to be done, in my opinion. But certainly for the chart, if we get a little bit of a break here, I mean, this is probably the next level I'll be sort of looking for. And this is smack bang on 66. So around that zone there. I mean, you could sort of drag this and sort of say that that is your little sort of range, and this could give a potential larger target, but I wouldn't be too confirmed on this one just for now. I think the sort of the here and now is going to be the 66 before we sort of start to see a little bit of a cool off. We're also coming into Tuesday, of course. You've got generally this bit of a turnaround Tuesday where people try to sort of book some profits for the sort of continued moves of this Friday and the Monday. And also something to sort of be aware of, we've got the Thanksgiving in the US at the end of the week. So that's going to sort of stuff up volumes a little bit sort of come the end of the week. All right, enough on the Aussie. We'll pop across to DXY as we have been sort of going on. As I was saying, we're coming into this little support zone. You see the markets, it just clipped into it. And, this is the thing, sort of, I'm not the only one that's looking at these levels, obviously. But this is why we mark them out. We say, where has it been previously? Why may they be sort of looking to sort of bounce it off these zones? And if we chuck onto the daily, we can look back and we can say, look, these are the zones here where we've seen it previously. And if you drag this across as well, I noticed this just after I drew it up last time. This is also an area that previously had been the resistance. So, it has also, obviously on the way back up, acted as a bit of a support. And, here we are coming back down into it again. But we are seeing, if you look at this and drag it out, this is quite a sort of significant drop off. And it's been very, very fast. Like, this has been unrelenting. But these moves that are completely unrelenting, they offer very fast reversals. The whole sort of up the stairs, down the escalator kind of sort of thinking and method with this. And they're really unwinding this quite quickly. I think sort of coming down, obviously my next little price targets around here. Sort of the larger price target that I've called from the top, back down at 102.40. 102.40 will sort of give us that 61% retracement of that large move, but that sort of gives an idea of the speed that this is unwinding at. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a little bit of a push along the way, as I've sort of said a couple of times, but certainly more downside to come in my opinion with DXY. So we'll have to sort of see how they sort of like to open this one. But you can see they were trying to sort of form a little bit of a channel and try to break out here. But the fact that even from a technical standpoint, this isn't a great channel, but it's okay. And they had a little bit of a negative divergence. It broke out and it still got slammed down. Like it really didn't muster up much of a rally at all. We are seeing the RSI sort of diverge a little bit here as we still sort of come down. We're starting to sort of roll around. And this is another thing that sort of makes me think that we could be sort of getting a little bit of a rally effort come the Tuesday at the moment. If we go for an arch here, we can see this sort of thing happening, a little bit of a roll around, and it's starting to flatten out a bit here. It's not to sort of say it can't just continue to melt down. We've got the bottom side of this channel that it has sort of been sort of playing along with. So again, maybe you could get a fast little shoot down here. If we get a little fast, complete sort of capitulation move outside this sort of larger channel or falling support, really, I imagine this, and this gets brought back up, that's what I'm going to call the short-term bottom. And it's going to be like this. And you're just going to see these fast moves down, fast rejects up. That's people covering their shorts. That's people sort of going, okay, yep, let's give it another go, whatever. and that's what will get us our push up a little bit. But for the moment, we're sort of coming into this zone. We've got a couple of areas of support down underneath, so I would say we're getting close to a point where I'd expect a little bit of a push up and a rally on DXY. If we could sort of drag something along these lines over here, this could at the same time offer a little bit of resistance for us here. If you did see that push up, so as we can sort of pink out 2 points here, it gives us a little bit of a top side here and just to sort of push down a little bit more. And as you can see, if it does this, it'll be coming into like a little bit of a wedge. And obviously, as we know, wedges are kind of reversals. Cool. And finally, just flip across onto China. And China continues to sort of melt down towards that 38%. Jumping onto a higher time frame. And this is the thing, and this is why I say that sort of like, I'm happy to look at DXY when trading Aussie, because although it's not, it's just DXY for me, it's just a barometer of USD sentiment, really. Obviously, it doesn't have the same strong correlations. It's not like sort of trading Euro, trading DXY, but these sort of things, it gives you a broad sense of sort of how the market is viewing the US dollar and then how they're sort of doing. And this is where you can pick up some divergences, where you're seeing that it's sort of dropping off in some currencies but not others. But when you see it melting down across the board, you're seeing it being sold against the Aussie, you're seeing it sold against China, you're seeing it sold against all the other majors in the DXY. You know that is the general sentiment we're getting out of US dollar. It's not just look, Euros moving up because they've had something strong in Europe, but they're still selling Aussie. So you know what I mean, where you can get that disparity. If you're seeing it and move against everything, you're seeing copper breaking out, you're seeing China sort of moving down, or the yuan sort of strengthen up, and sort of the China cross and that sort of coming down. You're seeing these sort of correlating things, cross chart correlation, basically. This is what you're sort of looking for. Confluence, that's the word I was looking for. Cross chart confluence is what I call it. And certainly sort of once you see these things happening, you know that, okay, this is the time to sort of like try and step on it a little bit. Anyway, all I can really sort of say for China at the moment is we got this next big level down here, which to me sort of seems it's stuck in a little bit of no man's land. It's trying to sort of consolidate here. Again, little rallies, but I imagine them to be sold into. I think this is pretty much a magnet for it all. Our second price target. This one I've been calling from the top up here. Just absolutely cut through that first measured move. Sort of one from that range, which for some reason has gone 3 times bigger. But yes, we're sort of very much targeting this area and moving into this ultimate sort of head and shoulders pattern formation. I mean, we tried to call the head and shoulders up here about 5 times, and this right shoulder obviously just kept going along with the great China grind. But yeah, this one's been playing out very well to the downside. Certainly once we sort of broke through this rising support, which we identified months and months ago, it's really just been a one-way trade coming down here. It's been very quick, very fast. All right, that's about it from me. Okay, and of course, this time again, I've sort of forgot to do gold. Quick look at gold. We had that channel. You can see pretty nicely it sort of gave way, but bang, right on support really, this sort of 70 zone, dropped down a little bit over 65, it is a low, but we can see that this is the bounce back up here. Again, 80, that's the crucial line in the sand for me to sort of say whether we're sort of like going to sort of keep sort of battling and pushing and grinding higher towards these breakout points, or whether we're going to be sort of going, okay, no, we're in a slow drift downward kind of thing. But certainly at the moment, it's pushed off the lows very nicely. If we get down onto the lower time frame, we can see that we had a little bit of a sort of channel coming down through here. And this is what we were trading yesterday. It provided another entry as well overnight, which is very great, very strong. You can see that it respected it. And so we know that whoever's sort of pushing or moving this market, you know, they've stepped in each time, and it's been an orchestrated sell down. Here, 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 and here. Anytime it's hit this line, it's bought it equally. We were selling it. Just basically over and over and over, but it just ground down along this line through here. We're back up through this now, and it's had a very big sort of push off the open here, back up to 81 and that at the moment. So if we can see this sort of continue back past 85, realistically actually a close over 83, but 85 we'll call it confirmation. I would say this is just a sort of a fake out move that, you know, similar to we saw sort of with copper a couple of weeks back, that it sort of broke down, Everyone's okay, drag in a whole bunch of shorts, hit out some stops of longs, and then fires back up. So certainly gold sort of above 80 is still healthy in the short term for me. Anyway, just a little one there. That's it from me.